With everything that's been happening in the market in the last couple of years or so, who's buying? It's the real estate show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name is Rick Naples. I am the owner-broker of Zone Realty LLC. You zone your home. Buying. It's an interesting prospect. You know, with everything that's been going on in the real estate market, with high interest rates and prices going up and people not knowing what's going on with their jobs and questions about the economy and wars happening and so on and so forth, it's a very confusing period, but people are still buying houses. So who are these buyers? I mean, where are they coming from? Who has the ability to purchase a home in today's real estate market? Well, I like to step back a little bit and talk about the different generations. Now, what I mean by that is, how do generations have anything to do with home buying? Well, let's take a look at it. I mean, if you look at the different generations, in other words, when people were born, and what's been going on in the world, and how that has shaped their attitudes towards their general lives, it also puts them in a position, as far as what's happening economy-wise, to be able to purchase a home. Now, some people were savers, where they saved all their money. Other people got jobs where they had, investment accounts or retirement savings programs, and they purchased the home mainly as an investment for their future. You're also looking at people that are looking to buy homes simply because they want to own their own home. We know now, today, rental prices have gotten a little bit out of control. And that's because there's so few apartments out there to rent, just like there's so few houses out there to buy. So there's a lot of competition. And when you have competition, you're going to see prices rise. This is an interesting time. Now, as a realtor, I've heard a lot of talk that the main buyers coming out into the marketplace are what we call the millennials. The millennials are the folks that are just coming of age or into that age, which the typical buyer is profiled as. Now, the millennial is dealing with today's marketplace. They're dealing with prices being high on homes, just a few houses that are out there for sale, not a lot of choices. They're dealing with economic situations that past generations didn't deal with. They're not folks who have a lot of money at hand, but they're very accepting of what the current mortgage interest rates are and prices are, because that's all they know. Now, some of the earlier millennials that bought early in their lifetimes may have enjoyed the low mortgage rates. So the 7% rate that might be out there now seems kind of high. But for most of them getting into the marketplace, it's the norm. So they're really not concerned about the mortgage rates. The bottom line goes to, can you afford the monthly payment? Obviously, that's going to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to buy a home or rent an apartment or do anything. It's, what is it going to cost? That is the big consideration. Well, how do you prepare for those costs? Well, you have to set some guidelines. You have to set some preparation. I talk about it all the time on the Real Estate Show about being prepared to buy and the steps that you should take in order to be prepared to buy. But as we've seen the generations move from year to year and the economic influences on those generations, we've seen the generations get shaped in attitude and social interaction, and this follows through not only in their personal lives, but in the way that they're looking and purchasing homes. Now, I talk about the generations a lot, and to give you some idea, I put together a presentation that talks mostly about how they define what a generation is, and we'll take a look at those generations and the years that those generations were born. And then later on in the show, I'm going to talk about some of the characteristics. I want you to watch closely because first of all, determine what generation you were born in. And then when we look at the characteristics, maybe you can see something about yourself in those characters. All right, let's take a look at the presentation. I didn't know there were so many different generations. You know, the researchers that are out there and the people that study the social atmosphere of basically the human existence, they like to categorize things. They like to put people within certain areas. And that's basically done by everybody, quite honestly. We make judgments, we make callings based on our own personal experience or some of the things that we've seen or heard or read or whatever. But when it comes to buying a home, we all pretty much fall into, I guess, the same category, the same bucket. We're looking to purchase a home to have something to own, to not be a renter anymore, to build up future value or future income. It's an investment. There's all kinds of reasons for purchasing a home. There's all kinds of motivations behind purchasing a home. A home is a place to live. Now, of course, your apartment's also a place to live, but a home is a little different. A home is something that's yours. Now, I know a lot of folks are going to argue with me and say, technically, the home's not yours. It's the bank's, and the bank owns the home. Well, that's true, because a lot of us, when we buy a home, we have to finance it. I mean, if you're fortunate enough where you've saved all your life, or you have an income potential that's coming in where you can buy a home for cash, wonderful. But most of us are going to find that we have to finance a home. So yes, technically the bank owns a home until you pay off the mortgage. But you own the home. Your name's on that note. Your name's on that home. The home is yours. It's something that you can mold or change or shift or redesign or change the colors on and furnish and so on and so forth to make it your own. There's nothing like owning something to be able to have that priorship of being able to do what you will with it, so on and so forth. Home ownership seems to be the main driving force for the motivation to buy. Now, in today's market, we're dealing with interest rates that are higher. We're dealing with home prices that are higher because of the competition out there and so few homes that are available for you to buy. So you need to step back and take a look and see whether or not this market is a market you want to get into. Now, I say that kind of with a little bit of a smirk only because previous generations did the exact same thing. Back a few years ago, the goal is you grew up, you got an education, you went out into the workforce, you earned some money, you then wanted to start a family, and then you wanted to buy a home. It was kind of the same pattern. Nowadays, things have shifted. Buying a home is still a very popular thing and a very important thing that a lot of folks want to do. But some people are just fine with always renting. They don't want to have the issues of owning a home. Or maybe the market's just not right for them to get into today. What's happening around you, what your personal experience are, what is influencing the ways that you think or the ways that you react to things, can influence the idea of home ownership. Some folks feel home ownership's not all that important. Other people don't understand why those folks don't think it's important. It all depends on how you've been shaped as you go through or as they define a specific generation. Now, I put together a presentation that basically describes the characteristics. Remember, we looked at that first presentation that defined what the generations were? Did you see in that maybe the years that you were born? So kind of puts you into that particular block. Now this one's going to show the characteristics of those generations. And again, it's like I just said, characteristics or the attitudes of people is kind of molded by the influences that are outside what we've been experiencing. So let's take a look at this presentation and see if any of these seem familiar to you. Did you see yourself in any of that? It's kind of interesting that what the researchers have found, that they've looked back at each generation and kind of what was going on in history at that particular point in time, and how that may have shaped some of the people's attitudes as they move forward in life. This, I think, formulates some of our basics, some of the ways that we look at things as we move forward. And when it comes to the real estate market, one of the challenges that a realtor has is the generation that they are going to work with, whether it's selling a home or buying a home. These people come in with certain preconceived notions or attitudes, either about the process or about the preparation in being able to sell or buy a home. Some people are very cautious, others are very mistrusting. Some question whether the realtor is going to do the job for them. Some question the real estate market as a whole. Some have trust issues, others are very trusting. The realtor has to learn what all these different generations are and kind of gear themselves or adjust themselves to work with that generation to whom they're going to be representing. Now, I mentioned earlier what we called the millennials. The millennials are those folks that have now come of age that are looking to get into the housing market. They're looking to buy their first home. And this is the group of folks that have grown up with the internet. They've grown up with technology. They live on their smartphones. They use the computer constantly. Because of COVID, this is the generation that has experienced working from home more than past generations had. They're able to do their business, do their life, their shopping, so on and so forth, while they're on the go, while they're moving, while they're mobile. Cars that they drive are technological wonders. We're even looking at this particular point in time of cars that actually drive themselves. Who knew? These are things that previous generations never had to deal with. It was science fiction to them. But today's generation, it's almost become a norm. The realtor out there has to keep themselves up to date on the new technologies. New software is constantly coming out, new abilities to search for homes are coming out, new information is coming out. Millennials want to know all this information. They have this information at their fingertips. So a realtor has to make adjustments, whether they're an older realtor who's been in the business for a number of years and comes from a different generation, or a newer realtor that is used to the internet and used to the technology that's out there. We all have to make adjustments in order to be compatible to get to the goal that we all want to get to, right? When you're looking to purchase a home, you're looking to find the home you want to buy, afford the home you want to buy, get the mortgage you want in order to get that home, and also to be able to understand the process from beginning to end to get to the closing. Nothing happens until you get to that closing table. That is where you actually get the keys and you actually sign the paperwork and you actually become the owner of that home. That's when the seller finally can release the keys, get the money they need to pay off their mortgage or to buy another home or whatever they're going to use the funds for. That's when things start to change. But until you get to that point, there are a number of different things that you have to do and a number of different things you have to accomplish. Now, at the beginning of the show, I was talking about who is the buyer. Who's buying homes? We've looked at the generations that are out there. We've looked at some of the characteristics of those generations. But who is actually buying a home? Well, the National Association of Realtors recently did a profile study, and they looked at buyers and they looked at sellers and they looked at the types of people that are purchasing homes compared to the relative markets that are out there. And they've come up with some statistics. And I thought it was interesting because some of those statistics are showing what they've shown in the past. There's no real big difference. But others had some surprises in it. So I put together this little presentation that just took some of those highlights just to share with you. Let's take a look. Well, that was interesting. Again, it's kind of interesting to see who actually is buying homes. In that one slate that showed the ages, we're seeing the millennial ages, around the 35, are the folks that are kind of getting into the market. They're the first-time buyers. But we're also seeing The experienced buyer, the person who has a home, the person who has purchased a home, lived in it for a while, and built up some equity so that they have the monies available to purchase their next home, such as down payment and so on and so forth, or even a buy down rate, which I talked about on a previous real estate show. They're around age 58, all the way up to age 76. It's interesting to see the dynamics of how these things have changed as to who actually is buying homes. But something stands true from generation to generation, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what's going on in the economy. Most folks believe that home ownership is the goal, to own a home as opposed to be renting from someone else. And they're looking at different ways of making that possible, even though prices have gone up and interest rates are high. One of the things that was mentioned was the multi-generational home. You know, multi-generational homes are just that, different generations living within the same household. It could be a couple that purchases a home that is looking for amenities to be able to take care of their aging parents, such as the accessory apartment. It could be someone who has older children that because of the expenses out of there, they graduate college and they just can't get into the marketplace. Apartments are too expensive, houses are too expensive, so they move back home. You now have a new generation living with the older generation. There's all kinds of dynamics going on in order to make home ownership a possibility. Now, there's also other ways to own homes, too. I've dealt with a lot of clients over the years that find themselves all of a sudden a homeowner, simply because a house was willed to them. Mom and dad, or grandma and grandpa, or someone in the family owned a home, had it for years, paid off the mortgage, owned the house, there was no encumbrances, no liens against it, and they've passed away and they've willed the home to someone else, and now that person's a homeowner. They haven't had to go through the mortgage process. They haven't had to go through the different preparations. They just seem to inherit the home. Now, that's another story, and I could probably do a whole show on that because that comes along with some other challenges. But again, home ownership seems to be the consistent goal. It seems to be the goal of every generation as we move through time, to be able to get yourself in a position where you'll be able to buy and own a home. My name is Rick Naples, and this has been The Real Estate Show. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Water's warm at Jaws Pawn, and we're stocked full of treasures. Big or small, we buy it all. We buy and sell fast rides, power tools, vintage guitars, and so much more. Walk the plank in style with our fine jewelry, diamonds, and watches. Plus, we have a huge selection of the latest video games, including the new PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Jaws Pawn, conveniently located on Meriden Waterbury Turnpike in Southington and West Main Street in New Britain.